Okay. Yes, so you're there, Aisha? Is my
Yes,
voice clear? Okay, perfect. So we started with evolution. You were there in the last class, right?
so I was only there for the last 30 minutes.
You could not, like, you missed the last 30 minutes.
No, so I was only there for the last 30 minutes.
Oh, you joined late. Okay, no worries. Cool. So basically we started, so you know that we started with evolution. And in the last class, I kind of just oriented all of you to this chapter and what are we going to learn in this chapter and why is that important from like education point of view. And basically I did not start with any major experiments in the last class, but we are going to do it today. So if you were there in the last half an hour, you remember we were discussing about like early thinkers and philosophers who started questioning about not just evolution of life, but majorly the origin of life, right? How did life originated and where did it originated? And we talked about a few theories, namely panspermia, special creation, and abiogenesis that we are going to talk about in today's class as well. So do you have any doubt in any of this?
No, so
No. Okay. And I told you to go back and read about some names, first being Operin and Haldane, and then Urey and Miller. Did you go back and read about it?
no, so
Huh? Okay, no worries. So let's start with a very simple question. So we also talked about the theory of spontaneous generation, right? Where people used to believe that it doesn't need anything per se for life to appear. It can just appear out of nothing. Like it can spontaneously generate from a dead, decaying, or not out of nothing, but from a dead, rotting, or non-living matter, right? But this was dismissed by Louis Pasteur, and he carefully did experiments to prove that this is not true. So what did Louis Pasteur did? I think I dictated that also in the last class. And then we went on to think about more rational and scientifically correct answers, which can also be backed by some proof. So back then, it was like very early, like in the first half of the 20th century. Back then, there were two thinkers, like I should say, scientists and thinkers who thought about a very livid idea that the first life form could have originated or could have come from pre-existing non-living molecules. Okay, so when we say non-living molecules, so molecules are all non-living, but like we don't say that molecules are living, but non-living organic molecules. So his idea was, like their idea was, there were two people, Operin and Haldane. Their idea was that if we keep breaking down a living system, okay, let's start with any organism of your choice. If I start with human, let's say, human being one of the most complex of higher organisms. If we break down the human uh, organization as a living system into pieces, so we are the organismal level. As we go inside the organismal body, we see there are organ systems. Many organ systems come together. Each organ system is formed by multiple organs. Each organ is formed by multiple tissues. Each tissue has, similar kind of cells, but a lot of different cells, individual cells. And if we go inside a cell, like cell is the fundamental and structural unit of life, we say, correct? The simplest system we know now is prokaryotic system. So that is the smallest unit of life. Am I correct? Parker has joined in. Good evening, Parker. How are you?
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So we are discussing about breaking down the most complex life form, one of the most complex life form, which is human, and keep going smaller and smaller. We reach till cell. So each and every cell of our body, if we continue breaking down cell, what is cell made up of? Do you all agree that cell is the smallest structural unit of life? Do you all agree that?
No.
No. So what is the smallest unit of life?
An atom?
Atom. So which means our laptops are also made up of atoms. Our tables are also made up of atoms. Are they living?
No.
So then if you consider atom as the smallest unit of life, then everything in the universe is living because everything is made up of atom. So I think in your class 10th, you studied a chapter called Cell, the fundamental unit of life. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
So why do we call cell as the fundamental unit of life? Anyone? Iram and Rabia has joined in. Good evening, both of you. We are breaking down complex life. We are breaking down complex life into as smaller as we can to answer the question that where did first life might have come from. So we reach till cell and we are stuck at cell. Should we keep on breaking down cell? So cell is we call that cell is the fundamental unit of life. Why is that? This is class 10th stuff. Rabia?
Yes, sir.
Why is that? Why do we consider cell as the fundamental unit of life? Why not a nucleus, ribosomes, cell organelles, or like Aisha said, why not the molecules and atoms? Why cell? Why not a tissue? Why not an organ? But only cell is the fundamental unit of life.
Because maybe because the cell is like, capable to carry out the functions.
What are the what functions? If anything,
Like nutrition, respiration, excretion.
right. But the thing is, that is done by organs as well, right? Isn't it? Kidneys excrete, liver store a lot of nutrition. So what you're saying, I understand. I just want you to say it in clear terms, a little more clearly. When we say something is fundamental unit of life,
Those organs are comprised of cells.
right? So, and we can say that cells are formed of organelles. So why don't we call organelles as the fundamental unit of life? Why we chose nothing smaller and nothing bigger, but just the cell is my question. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I'm not sure, but maybe because cells can, divide, but not the organs or something like that.
But organs can also regenerate, but you can say that those are the cells in the organ which is regenerating. But I think you are trying to, you got the point. Let me just make it more clear what you are saying. So what Rabia is trying to say is that cell is called the fundamental unit of life because if you imagine the simplest life form, that could be a cell. And that is indeed true because bacteria is the simplest life form that we have as of now, like that we study, a prokaryote, and it's a It's nothing but a single cell. And a single cell is small enough, and both small enough and both big enough if you go from any direction. So it's the most balanced entity that is capable of independent existence in nature, right? Independent existence as a living system, correct? If I break down cell and go to organelles, I cannot take out organelles and they cannot survive by themselves. Like nucleus, if we keep nucleus out of the cell into a medium, it won't survive, right? It won't be behaving as a living system. So anything smaller than cell is technically non-living. It is organic, but it's non-living. Now you know the difference between organic and non-organic, everyone? What is organic
Yes, sir.
chemistry? What is inorganic chemistry deals with? So what is organic? Yes, Mariam wants to. Parker wants to me. Parker wants me to explain once again. Just what I said, right? So I'm saying that cell is the fundamental unit of life because it is the smallest entity which is complex enough. Okay, so it's both smallest and complex enough to have an independent existence as a living system. Okay. So for that matter, we can keep tissues and organs also live alive in certain media for hours. That's how organ transplantation works. But if you see an organ which is living, you can always say that it is the cells inside that is keeping that organ alive. Okay. So a cell is capable of independent existence as a living system. And to say that something is a living, it has some characteristics that we talked about in the last class. It should be able to sense its environment. It should be able to, respond to stimuli by sensing the environment. It should be able to get nutrition. It should be able to excrete out waste and protect itself and maintain itself different from its environment. That's what a living system does. Everyone agrees? Are we all on the same page?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So a cell is like a house. Okay. Whatever happens outside, whether it's whatever weather it is outside, we build house so that in the house we can control the environment of the house. So if it's very hot outside and you're not able to maintain environment that you want to live in your homes, then that defeats the purpose of a home, right? Similarly, a cell, whatever is the condition outside, up to some extent, not fully to every range, but to some extent, it can maintain its own microenvironment, okay, which helps it survive. So just like a house is made up of very small things called bricks, and cement, concrete or bricks. Similarly, a cell is also made up of other things called molecules. Now, these are proteins, lipids, sugar, etc., etc., etc. Lot of things. But if we go to the even if we break even further, we'll come to these molecules which make cells. But these molecules separately are not living. If I take a protein out of a cell and keep it in a medium, it will not be living because it will not show any property of living. It will not be self-nutritive. It won't protect itself. It cannot maintain itself separate from the environment. It cannot sense anything in the environment and cannot respond. So ultimately, a cell is made up of molecules, and these molecules are organic molecules. Now, what is organic and what is inorganic? What is the difference between organic and inorganic? We have Iram also. Iram, any idea what is organic and inorganic? These are basic fundamentals. So you all have to think and pay some attention to it.
Yes, organic
Yeah.
compounds have carbon atom while most of the inorganic compounds don't have carbon.
So organic compound is carbon atom or anything made up of carbon atom. You mean to say? But
Yes, sir.
is that always true? Just carbon. So is graphite
Carbon and
organic?
hydrogen.
Is that okay? You added hydrogen. So everything that has carbon and hydrogen, and when we talk about organic chemistry, there are four major players which are called CHON, CHON. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. If these four are there, like most of the organic compounds will always contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, right? So, and why we call them organic is the question. Because they are related to organisms, they're related to life. So organic molecules are either synthesized or used or metabolized within living systems. But inorganic molecules are not synthesized and are not exclusively present in living systems. Is it clear? So you can find many kinds of inorganic molecules on Moon, Mars, all other celestial bodies out there, which does not have life as of yet, right? But there are inorganic molecules present there. When we talk about organic molecules, we talk about proteins, sugars, lipids, basically going even in the fundamentals, amino acids, and sugar chains, etc., lipid chains. So if these organic molecules that make up a living cell, if they can be formed before a living cell from inorganic molecules. So like you said, can I say water is an organic molecule or water is an inorganic molecule?
Organic.
Water is an inorganic molecule because if you make two salts react, two inorganic salt react, then also water can be produced, right? So water is not something which is exclusively present inside living systems only. You understand? As a molecule. But if I say something like, sugar, C6H12O6, glucose. So glucose is something which is utilized, produced within living system, correct? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So to some extent, I'm reiterating what Inam said, that carbon has to be an essential component when we talk about organic molecules. Okay, anyway, so Operin and Haldane, there were two scientists, Operin and Haldane. They gave a theory. They said, and write down, they said that the first form of life could have come from pre-existing non-living organic molecules. And remember, I already discussed about the difference between dead and non-living. Okay, non-living is not as same as dead. So pre-existing non-living organic molecules. Now, what molecules he was referring to? Basically, he was referring to your nucleotides, because see, nucleotide, both DNA and RNA, are organic molecules. If you take it out and keep it somewhere, they're not living by themselves. Proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, they're all organic molecules, but non-living, right? But when they all come together, they somehow miraculously make a cell. Now the question is, what you say makes some sense, but what doesn't make sense is how can this happen? So if there are two things that has to be proven, because this is just a theory, right? When they said it, some people said, okay, it is believable, but no one said that, yes, this is true. People said that, okay, this is believable, given that we find some evidences for it. Some people said, no, what they're saying is not believable. It can't happen. Life came from outer space only, and blah, blah. But let's figure out what you have to prove. So if you were Operin and Haldane in that era or contemporaries, and this theory was given, what is the first thing that you will ask? First thing is, if you claim that life can be assembled itself, it can be self-assembled from its components, right? Where does the components come from? Where does this nucleotide, protein, carbs come from? And the question is, the answer to that is whatever is present in the environment, which is inorganic and just molecules. So matter is there, right? Earth had a reducing atmosphere when it was formed. And in the prehistoric Earth, where life evolved, had very, very, what do you say, very, very extreme conditions, which were not very suitable for life. So extreme conditions and reducing atmosphere. What do we mean by extreme conditions? It was very high temperature. Why it was high temperature? Because Earth was a molten ball of matter when it was formed, and then it slowly cooled down. Now, what is the evidence to say this? It can, again, like, you can question every sentence of what I say and don't let me go unchecked. Okay. I'm not like a Baba giving out a pravachan here, so everything I say is true. So you have to ask for proofs. If you're not doing that, then you're not being true to this class, all of you. So don't stay silent, speak up. So how do we know that Earth at one point of time was molten? Anyone? Any proof that you have or that you know now? It could have been wrong, no? I'm just saying it, right? What is the proof that Earth at one point of time was all molten and now it's solid? Parker says yes, sir, but she is not telling what is the proof. What is the proof, Parker? What if someone asks you, I don't believe in this. Earth was never a liquid molten form. It was always solid like it is today. Because in many cultures and faiths, it's believed that Earth is how it is. Earth was how it is right from the beginning. So, but that's not true. The fossils and the remains of dinosaurs, that doesn't tell anything about Earth. In fact, that helps those who say that Earth was never molten, because if you say that there are fossils and there were dinosaurs roaming around, how are they roaming around on a molten Earth? So clearly, when dinosaurs were there, Earth was already a solid by then. We are talking about very, very way back in time. Also, I wanted to make one correction. I think I checked your NCRT, and does it somewhere says that the Earth is around the universe is around something 20 billion years old?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's not correct. We have no evidence to suggest that the universe is 20 billion years old. In fact, the consensus is about age of universe is 13.8 billion years. Okay, and someday if we have time, we can talk about how we reach that consensus, and there are evidences for it. But there's no evidence for 20 billion years old. In fact, there is a recent debate in the field. I think it's from a professor. He's a Indian origin professor only. He's a cosmologist, I guess. If I'm not wrong, in University of Ottawa, who has given a model a radical model that universe is twice what we think it is. So it's not 13.8, it is 26.7 billion years old, exactly double of what we think, because he did some calculations that doesn't fit in. And I think that everything makes sense if we increase it by the order of 2. But that, again, that's just one thing laid out. The field does not have a consensus on it, but it's 13.8 what the books say, what we know. Yes. So Parker says, how do people get to know how old is the universe? That's a whole lecture in itself, Parker. It's very interesting though, but it includes a lot of physics, and you have to understand Big Bang, which I don't think I am an expert of. But someday we'll discuss about it if we have time. Okay. So you can keep that in your Pandora box, that question, and let's just believe that universe exists. You don't have to believe, it does exist. And we are talking about Earth. Okay, let's not go very back, like too back in time, but let's talk about Earth. Is that okay, Parker? We'll someday talk about it. I just want to go a little bit further in this chapter today. Will that work for you, Parker? Only if you allow. Yes, no, something? Okay. I think Parker unmuted to say yes, but we couldn't hear anything. Yes, cool. So universe is 13.8 billion years ago as per our current knowledge. And anyone knows how old is Earth? Age of Earth?
Around 3 billion years.
Sorry? Come again. Someone was saying something, but then
4.5 billion years.
sorry, come again, Niram.
4.5 billion.
4.5, yes, 4.5 billion years old, which means 3 to 4 billion, says Parker. 3 to 4, 1 billion of, you cannot take a margin of 1 billion years, Parker. 3 and 4 are two very different things. Why? Because Earth is 4.5 billion. At the max, the estimate is plus minus 0.05. You add to 4.5, so 4.55 or 4.45, but it's, yes, 4.5 billion years old. And how old is the evidence for life on Earth?
4 billion.
Sorry? Come again?
4 billion. 4.
It's 3.7 billion years. Like the evidence that we have for the earliest traces of microscopic life, and the evidences that are left in rocks of organic molecules is 3.7 billion years old. So it means that for a very long time, when universe was formed, there was no Earth. And even when the Earth was formed, for a very long time, there was no life. And when life occurred, by that time, Earth was solidified with water on it. But we know that at one point of time before life came, Earth was molten, because anything, according to laws of physics and cooling down, if you have a ball of molten thing and it starts radiating out heat and starts solidifying, it will start solidifying and cooling down from the outside, just like an eggshell concept. So the Earth crust is solid, but the core of Earth is still molten. And the evidence is volcano eruptions that happen. All that lava that comes from the mantle and core of the Earth is a proof that Earth from inside is still molten and hot. Okay, only the crust, which is some 100 kilometers, not even 100, I think it's 64 kilometers, which is solid, right? Sparker has a question, sir. Like Earth, many planets are there. So does that mean there's life there too? We don't know. The short question is, we don't know. We have not found any evidence of short life. What we have found are organic molecules present in the atmosphere and surface of planets far away, but we don't have any proof of any multicellular or even unicellular life out there, right? But when we look for life, actually we don't look for organisms directly. That is one caveat in this whole study, because it's not very easy and possible to do. What we look for environment that can harness life. For example, liquid water, organic molecules containing carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. And so this we have found at multiple places, even inside our solar system also. We have found traces of organic molecules, but not fully functional life. It is believed that Mars in the past, in the distant past, Mars might have life, because Mars has remains or leftover evidences of river systems, basins, etc., etc. So Mars at one point of time was a living planet. Now it's a dead planet because it's no longer has a geothermal activity. So it's no longer hot from inside, it's all cooled down. So when any planet cools down completely from outside to inside, it's dead. Okay. Mostly. Anyways. So that's a $1 million question, Parker. We don't have an answer for that yet. But if you talk about chances, what is the probability, or what is the scientific guess or scientific logical chance, then yes, universe is huge beyond our contemplation. And to say that there cannot be a life anywhere else sounds more absurd than to say that, of course, there has to be life somewhere else, far, far away, because what happened on Earth evolutionarily can happen on any other planet which has the same kind of conditions. Okay. So it's a multifactorial thing. Presence of life is a multifactorial thing. So all the factors has to be there so that life can sustain. Okay.
Sure.
Parker? Yes, Iram.
Yeah, how do scientists know that there are many galaxies?
There are many galaxies
Yes, sir.
because we have imaged them. You build telescope, send it out of the Earth, like put it in Earth's orbit. So even from Earth, huge telescopes can see galaxies. We see Andromeda. Andromeda is our nearest galaxy. We can just see it, that it is there. So seeing is believing, right? We see galaxy, we see stars, we can just zoom in into it. We see the spirals that they have, and hence we know. So about galaxies is very, very simple. Hubble telescope has imaged millions and millions of galaxies in our universe. Millions, like literally, it's that number that has been imaged. So that's how we know that there are many galaxies.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know that all the images of Milky Way galaxy are fake? Can someone tell me why? So you go to Google, you put Milky Way galaxy, the galaxy in which we live, and you will get a lot of images of Milky Way galaxy, right? Have you ever thought who clicked that image? We have not
Yes,
sent
sir.
anything. Yeah, you thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of animation videos also. They go beyond that as well.
Yeah. So
How did they
if I
know
show you,
about it?
if I show you an image of Andromeda galaxy, which is our neighbor, that's a real image. That's how Andromeda galaxy looks. That's a real Andromeda galaxy, or any other galaxy, or Orion Nebula, or anything in the space, because we have imaged it. It's like a picture. It's photo we clicked. But we also see images of Milky Way galaxy, our own galaxy in which we are living. But we have not. How can we take the image of our own galaxy? What is real is what you see as, like, if you go to some hill station or things, you see in the sky there is a band that runs like this, like very bright stars. We see that band, right? And that makes sense. That is a real image because we can only see from one angle where we are in the galaxy. But a zoom out image where we can see the whole arms and the spirals and the center of the galaxy is all simulated images. They are not true images. But we know that Milky Way looks that way based on other evidences that we have for our own galaxy. Our is a spiral galaxy. So we just, made a simulation and kind of figured out this is how our galaxy might be looking. Just like how we recreate dinosaurs from the fossils, right? It's not 100% accurate. Maybe the dinosaurs were looking slightly teeny tiny details here and there different, but overall, just going by the bone anatomy and the fact that they were reptiles, they were cold-blooded, they had, 3-chambered heart, they might be having a tail. We can reconstruct to a very, very, very accurate degree, but not 100% true. So that's why they are all called recreated or,
So how do you get to
illustrated. How do?
How do you get to know that it has 3-chambered heart?
Because reptiles do have, right? Except for crocodiles, all reptiles have 3-chambered hearts. So dinosaurs were even primitive than the reptiles that we have now. So it's very less likely that dinosaurs had 4-chambered heart and they were warm-blooded. And then what's left now after they are gone is cold-blooded and they have a 3-chambered heart. You understand? So it's retrogressive kind of. The only reptile that has a 4-chambered heart and is an exception and kind of serves between the link is crocodiles. And crocodiles were very close to a dinosaur. So in a way, you are right that not all species of the saurs or the dinosaurs must be having 3-chambered heart. In fact, some species can have 4-chambered heart, like crocodiles. But even having 4-chambered heart, crocodiles are not warm-blooded. So they cannot maintain their own body temperature. They have to rely on sunlight. That's why you will see many crocodiles in the zoo opening their mouth wide and just sitting in the sun. They do that. Even in the wild, they do that. That way they heat their own body and the blood. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So these are just logical. We make logical guesses, which are educated guesses from the fossil records. And by comparing those life forms with the life form that we have today, which are related, okay? So your house lizards that you see, garden lizards, chameleons, they are all successors of dinosaurs, right? They are lizards. Dinosaurs were also lizard. So it tells a lot about, if you just zoom in and cut the whole body and just see the legs of a crow or of a chicken or any bird and just magnify it, you might think that it's a dinosaur's claw. Have you ever seen that? In fact, I think one of the Jurassic Park movies starts with this, that there's a bird, they focus on the leg and right away you know that it's a Jurassic Park movie, so you think, oh, it's a dinosaur. And then they zoom out and it's a crow taking something and flying because the story is of the present day, and then it goes back to something like that. Yeah, so the resemblance and the evolutionarily conserved phenotypes is too much. Okay, does that answer your question,
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So before I go, before we discuss any further about Earth and evolution of life, let's go back to this question, that what they hypothesize that life comes from non-living organic molecules. And the question is, where does these organic molecules come from? And this was a puzzle for a very long time. And then came two scientists, Miller and Urey. Okay. These two scientists kind of proved with experiments that it is possible if you provide all the conditions that were present in the prehistoric Earth. Now, what were the conditions? Write down this question. This question often comes in boards. What were the conditions on prehistoric Earth? What were the conditions on prehistoric Earth? First is very high temperature. And how do we know that? Because Earth was molten. It was hot, molten piece of matter. So obviously it was just cooling down and it was very, very hot. Okay. Second, there were lots and lots of volcanic eruptions, or you can call it volcanic storms, not like once in 100 years or 50 years a volcano erupts on Earth now. Not now. Now the Earth is very, very stable, okay, geologically. But back then, volcanic eruptions were just very common thing. You know, in a single 24-hour time frame, there'll be thousands of volcanoes erupting everywhere on the planet. That's how unstable it was. Then third thing was reducing atmosphere. What do we mean by reducing atmosphere? Like chemistry, you know that what are reducing agents and what is a reduced. What are reducing agents? Oxidative agents, reducing agents, right? Oxidizing agents, you know, all these people. Yeah, Parker,
Yes.
go ahead. Go ahead. What are reducing agents?
Reducing agents are agents which undergo oxidation, and oxidizing
Okay.
agents are agents which undergo reduction.
But how?
And
But does it make anything clear to you fundamentally? It's like saying that light is something which is not dark, and darkness is something where there's no light. But it tells us nothing about darkness and light itself. I'm asking what is light? You're like, when it's not dark, it's light. So those which can get oxidized are reducing agents, and those which gets reduced are oxidizing agents. But what do we mean by reducing in chemical terms, in chemistry?
in
Yeah,
chemistry,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Come on.
reducing agents are which lose electrons, and
Perfect. Yes, exactly. Go ahead. Complete it. So you know all the answers, but I don't know why. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and oxidizing agents are agents which gain electrons.
Right. So one thing that you very, very well said is, can I say that reducing agents can lose hydrogen or add hydrogen to something else? You know, when I say hydrogen, they also take electrons with it. So they are electron givers or hydrogen donators, whereas, or they can take oxygen out of something, right? They take oxygen out of something, and in that, while doing that, they reduce the substrate. So reducing atmosphere is where everything that is present in the gaseous form in the atmosphere wants oxygen and is willing to donate hydrogen and does not have oxygen. So reducing atmosphere contain gases like CH4, which is methane, and NH3, which is ammonia. So all these gases now are toxic to us, you know, because these are reducing gases. We need oxygen, carbon. We have carbon dioxide, oxygen in the atmosphere. They both contain oxygen, but back in time, oxygen was not present in the atmosphere. So where was oxygen present? Oxygen could not have come miraculously from somewhere. Whatever Earth had, oxygen came from that only. So if it was not in the atmosphere, where was oxygen? Sometimes you will see some newspaper articles on internet saying that scientists found oxygen on moon. That's true. We did find oxygen on moon, but not in a gaseous form, because moon does not have an atmosphere, right? So where is oxygen atoms if they are not in the form of CO2 or O2 in the atmosphere? Is there any other place where you can find oxygen?
Water.
Right, water. But remember, Earth is very, very hot. Do you think that such a hot molten Earth can have oceans or water?
When we had water vapor, right?
Yes. So it cannot have water in the liquid form, but earlier Earth had water vapors. But that was also not the abundance of all the oxygen. So water vapors were there. And one thing, what is the good thing about, not good, but what is interesting thing about water vapors is you can heat water vapors to a very, very high temperature and they still stay as water vapors. So about ice can only stay ice if it is sub-zero degrees Celsius, right? If it is more than 0 degrees Celsius, it starts melting and it becomes water, liquid water. And liquid water can stay liquid water in the range of 0 to 100 degrees Celsius. But steam can stay steam from 101 degrees to even 1000 degrees Celsius. So on earlier Earth, there were water vapors, and the temperature of these water vapors could be as high as 800, 900 degrees Celsius. Okay, so they contain some oxygen. Okay, perfect. Still not available as a gas to anything. But what
CO2.
else? CO2 was not there actually. Yeah. It might sound a little weird, but CO2 was not there in the it was not there in abundance in the not even abundance. I think it was not there in significant amount in the prehistoric Earth. In
Hydrogen.
chemistry, hydrogen. Yeah, hydrogen was there. CH4 has hydrogen, NH3 has hydrogen. Even hydrogen itself, H2 was there on primitive Earth. Water vapors were there, but we are talking about oxygen. Where was all this oxygen that we are breathing? This 21% oxygen that goes in our lungs day and night. Where was this? See, if you start thinking logically about biology, things will start making sense, and you can find your own evidences also to support that. But what scientists have found, it was not in the atmosphere. CO2 was not in the atmosphere, Parker. In chemistry, you have studied about oxides, haven't you? Iron
Yes, sir.
oxide, calcium oxide. There are oxides of every metal and also non-metals, right? Sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide. So all the oxygen was on the crust in Earth itself. Whatever was cooling down or whatever was molten, everything was present in the form of metal oxides and non-metal hydroxides, etc. Even on Moon, we have a lot of oxygen, but all that oxygen is in the surface, in the rocks of the Moon, okay, not in the atmosphere. So that's why the atmosphere was reducing, because there was no oxidizing agent present in the atmosphere. Everything was reducing. CH4, NH3, H2O, and H2. Everything reducing. No oxygen. Is it clear, everyone? Perfect. Now, what Urey and Miller, who read what Operin and Haldane said, and they thought, let's wait a minute. Let's think about it. Is it possible that if I just take these things, if I take methane, ammonia, water, and hydrogen, and do something to it, allow it to evolve, and when I say do something, only do what could have been done to these molecules back in the prehistoric Earth. And if I can find organic molecules coming from these molecules, organic molecules like the building blocks of carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, then can I say that what Operin and Haldane has actually hypothesized is true? It is possible to make organic molecules from inorganic reducing molecules. Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, this will be one great proof if someone can prove it. someone can prove it. So they did a very long experiment that ran for years, not just few months, but ran for years. And people are running these experiments in different parts of the world in different laboratories. They call it synthetic evolution. They are making these organic molecules, even nucleic acid, even RNA in their labs. Okay. So let's take the first baby step, which is the leap, giant step for understanding origin of life. So what they did, they took a jar, okay, which was sealed, and it only had an outlet and an inlet, both properly airtight and sealed. In that jar, he filled all these gases which were only present in primitive Earth, nothing else. So in this, he filled methane, and he filled ammonia, and he allowed hot water vapors inside and hydrogen gas. That's fine, nothing else. And for any chemical reaction to happen, there is one thing that is required always. What is that one thing? Any reaction cannot happen without energy, right? Yes or no? Can molecules collide, make bonds without energy? When you do anything in chemistry lab, have you noticed that you provide energy either in the form of heat, light? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. And what was the source of energy on primitive Earth? Any
High,
idea?
temp
Sorry?
high temperature.
Can I say volcanic eruptions and lightning and thunder? Because that's what will happen when there'll be lots and lots of, because electric discharge will always happen, right?
Yes.
So he put electrodes in this. Again, these electrodes were like with the airtight opening. So these are electrodes. You give them some electricity and they will zap inside, like they will form a spark inside, right? So this will act as source of energy. Apart from that, this had, we also know that Earth slowly over millions of years started cooling down. So to mimic that, he made an inlet and an outlet system covering this pipe. This inlet and outlet system sends in water. So water comes in. This is relatively colder water than this water vapor. So this acts as a condenser. It condenses whatever is inside, but this water does not come in contact with the gases. It is on from the top. Do you understand? This pipe comes. So this water just goes around this pipe. This pipe is continuous, and then water comes out. So this is happening constantly and slowly, because Earth was also cooling. So he's mimicking that. And then there is a bend in this pipe, right? And then again, this goes to another jar. Okay. Again, an airtight enclosure. And this comes up, and ultimately this forms a closed system. So remember, it's a closed system so that no contamination can come from outside. And here in this jar, he is boiling the water. So there is whatever is inside, he's boiling it to This is the temperature checker. It boils, then again evaporates, goes out. And of course, because pressure can sometimes build and this can all thing can burst. So to release something, you have a vacuum pump. So you have to make a vacuum pump outlet. So this outlet, whenever you need to remove or clean everything, you can just use this. So this is called the Miller apparatus or Urey-Miller apparatus. And this is Miller's experiment, Urey and Miller's experiment. And in this, what's happening is, let's try to understand. So there are the gases present on primitive Earth. The only source of energy is what was present on primitive Earth, lightning and temperature. And to mimic slow cooling down, there was water coming in, but not coming in contact. So it from the what I can say. Do you understand this joint that I have made? So imagine a pipe and you wrap a bandage around it, right? And that bandage is cool, something like that. Water comes in, cools down whatever this pipe is, and goes out. And then when cooling happens, water droplets will deposit here, right? The water vapors that you have put here, this is gaseous, this becomes liquid here. And then it again boils, again become water vapors, goes up, again comes back to this chamber, and the cycle continues for forever. Okay, so this is what he did. And after some time, he could actually find that there were molecules present in this collection here, this point here. And when he took sample from this point, from here, when he took out samples and he tested those samples, he found that everything which was important for making the first cell could be produced by this method, given enough amount of time, and they will react among themselves continuously, and without any organic intervention from these molecules, organic molecules like sugars, amino acids can be formed. And this has been repeated multiple times across the globe in many labs. People do it now very, very frequently. Okay. So what does this tell you? Write down. So, let me tell you an interesting thing. So when for the first time this was done, people thought, even Miller himself thought that, oh, I think this is some contamination. I think we contaminated the water or something while we were introducing everything inside. So they did not even believe their own results, and no one believed their result. They were like, how can you just put these things? That's true that it has CHON, all the things required to make. So we know that now it's very common that if you have carbon and if you have oxygen, you can make starch, right? But that happens within a living system. But what they were doing is, without a living system also it can happen. You just need lots of time, and Earth had millions of years. And if in few years or few months, they can produce amino acids, can't, in evolution, more complex materials be produced given millions of years? Of course, right? So they repeated the experiment and the same results came. Then someone else repeated it and they also found the same thing. And then with this limited evidence, the first part of the theory was proven, that chemical evolution happened before biological evolution. Okay, so write down. Miller observed the formation of amino acids from inorganic constituents. From inorganic constituents. Okay. He and other scientists also found sugars, nitrogenous bases, lipids in similar experiments. Okay. So this experiment tells that if you create early Earth conditions on a laboratory scale, and within months and years, you can get very, very small, basic, but organic molecules that make up living cells. And that's great. That's first step. But still, what people were not convinced with is that, okay, what you say can happen, but how can a self-replicating cell be formed from this? You know, if we keep it for millions of years, how can a cell form? Now, still there were many answers to give. And in between, when we do these analysis now, you know that even meteorites, I was telling you about one such a study that has been done. So Japan sent a probe to get some samples from an asteroid that passed by close from the Earth. And they found that organic molecules are also found in meteorites and asteroids. So it's not a thing of, amazement or surprise that our universe, other planets, satellites, meteorites, they're all full of organic molecules, because what happened on Earth is happening everywhere. But we don't see living organisms everywhere. So that is something very special that happened. And it happened on Earth. In our solar system, it happened on Earth as of now that we know. Now, the next question. So everyone is convinced that this is called chemical evolution. So you can write down the whole concept of this is that chemical evolution is followed by biological evolution. So chemical evolution happened first. And this evidence proves the first part of the Operin and Haldin's theory. But the second part, that a living system can come up, is still left to prove. So let's go there. Is this part clear, everyone? Anyone is dubious, doubtful, does not believe? I have many other evidences to give. I'm just not giving it for the sake of time. But if you are not convinced, I'll give them. If you're convinced, it's fine. Anyone who's not convinced that, it's not very convincing. Like, I'm sure that this experiment itself is very convincing. The only caveat in this experiment could have been contamination, that what you are thinking is coming out of the experiment is what you only sent in through some contaminated electrode or something. But it has been repeated not just 1, 2, 3, but hundreds and thousands of times, even more till now. So yeah. So is this clear, everyone? Give me a thumbs up, all 4 of you. Okay. Now, so let's go forward and talk about, from these non-cellular molecules, how can the first cell be formed? And we know that somewhere around 3.7 billion years ago, the first primitive life form came. We call it the last common ancestor, last universal common ancestor, or LUCA. So even before that, there's something. Anyways, but let's talk about cell now. Do you think that cell is something that can be formed by itself? Doesn't look like, right? It looks like cell is very complex a thing. there is everything happening in so much of synchronization. There is a nucleus. There are multiple compartments, ribosomes, a protein machinery. It almost seems impossible for something as complex as a cell to just come up by itself. Right? There has to be a magical hand behind it to make it happen. But that's not actually true. I don't want to take the whole fun out of it, but I'll disclose something at the very end of today's class. But we have 15 more minutes, so let's talk about let's pretend that we know nothing. And I'm sure that you people know less, and that's the whole trick of this. So, what is a cell? Tell me. If I ask you to create a cell, what will be the first thing you will create? Where will you start? If I ask you to build a house, where will you start? Yes, Parker, my question is, if you have to create a cell, a living cell, where will you start? What is the first thing you need to make a cell? Parker says nucleus. But if you just make nucleus the first thing, then the nucleus is unprotected. The moment you will form it, it will die. It will react with chemicals in the surrounding. It's like in my house, the first thing I will make is my bed. So it will be your bed in the middle of a jungle because there's nothing else. You started with your bed. Think again. When we make a house, do we really start with the bed or the sofa or my study table? Don't we start with the walls first, the boundary first? Because that is what is going to protect whatever we are going to build inside, isn't it? Yes or no? So if you people are going to make a cell, you will start with cell membrane. You need something to enclose whatever now is going to happen inside. So the moment we define a cell membrane, now we can do different things inside than from outside. Yes or no? No one is interested. I think is it boring? The story of life? Just kidding. Anyways, so yes, it's a cell membrane. And what do we know about cell membrane already? What is cell membrane made up of?
Phospholipid.
That's called cell membrane is known as plasma membrane. It's the another name. What it is made up of? I'm not asking what it does. Yes, it's protect the cell. Yes, you're right, Parker. But what is a cell membrane made up of?
So I said phosphobilipid layer.
It is lipids. Exactly. It's phospholipid. So it is made up of lipid, a lipid molecule. A lipid molecule has two ends. Hydrophilic end and a chain, which is a long carbon chain, which is hydrophobic. So when I say hydrophilic, this is how a lipid molecule is. So the head is hydrophilic and the tail is hydrophobic. Tail doesn't want to interact with water. Head loves to interact with water. These are all basic things you have studied, people. If you cannot remember these, please go back and revise because this is very important, right? Clearing an entrance is very difficult without fundamentals, but relatively easier with your fundamentals. And in a cell membrane, if I zoom in this piece of cell membrane, we know that cell membrane is something like this. It's a lipid bilayer, correct? And it is stacked in a manner where all the hydrophobic tails are toward inside. And all the hydrophilic head moieties are arranged outside. Correct? This is how lipid cell membrane looks like. Everyone?
Yes.
Now, lipid, they already could find that lipid molecules can be formed from these inorganic molecules in this Miller's experiment. Now, the next puzzle to solve is, can lipid molecules assemble by themselves? If that is not possible to do, then every theory is busted of evolution. If lipids cannot self-assemble, then it's all gone, and you have to believe in special creation. Someone has to assemble it by themselves. But the interesting thing about lipids is it's very common that lipids self-assemble themselves. We all use this thing every day in our lives when we clean ourselves, when we clean our clothes. How many of you remember you read about micelle formation in soap and detergent molecules? Anyone remembers micelle formation in soap and detergent molecules? What is a soap? People, soap. You have not studied soap? Come on, you must have studied soap in chemistry. Yes, it is proof that lipids self-assemble. We do it every time. How do you think your stains, when you wash your clothes, how does your stains go away from the clothes? What is present in a soap? Remember, and if you remember, I don't know if you people have seen those, but when I was a kid, like when I was like very young in my primary standards, there used to come a soap at our house for cleaning clothes, which was earlier times, these soaps were made of animal fat. It was brown in color. It smelled awful, but it cleaned clothes like magic. It's animal fat soap. Nowadays, because we have synthetic soap molecules, we can just make soap in laboratories, soap molecules. We don't need to extract it from animal fats and make it a soap. So basically, all our soaps are nothing but lipid molecules having one hydrophobic and one hydrophilic moiety. And whenever they find something which is dirt, dirt is mostly oil soluble or lipid soluble. So this is the dirt. You will see all the lipids will arrange, self-assemble around it by themselves, having all the head moieties towards outside and all the hydrophobic moieties towards inside. Now imagine this in a 3-dimension like a ball. So at the center of the ball is your dirt, grease, fat. So all our stains are mostly, oil based. So these stains are trapped by these molecules and they form a micelle by themselves. They arrange in a very neat monolayer. So in this case, soaps have a monolayer, a single layer, as you can see. In the case of plasma membrane, it is a bilayer, right? But we know that inside the cell, living cell also, there are some things which are monolayer. For example, if you know about tonoplast, plant cell, you have studied plant cell. Have you studied vacuoles in plant cell? The membrane of a vacuole is, some vacuoles are monolayer lipid membranes. They can also self-assemble. Our soap lipids can also self-assemble. Lipids in general can self-assemble. So the moment on prehistoric Earth lipids were formed, they started forming assemblies. For millions of years, they were waiting for the best assembly. And the best assembly is something where it's bilayer because it's more stable. And the moment it forms a bilayer, it's very easy to form a bilayer. You form a monolayer, which looks something like this, and expose it to water. So if you put a monolayer in the water, what we see is either it attaches to something and forms a sphere like this, which is called micelle, or what happens is this membrane folds upon itself and protects all its hydrophobic ends. And on both the sides, you will see a hydrophilic end. That makes sense because on this side also then there will be water, no problem. The head loves water. On this side also there will be water, no problem. The head loves water. And when we talk about a bacteria living in a pond, outside the bacterial membrane is the pond water. Inside the bacterial membrane is the cytoplasm, which is again 90 to 94% water. So does that make sense, everyone? Convinced with this first step that lipids can self-assemble to form plasma membranes. The plasma membrane, of course, the first plasma membrane that would have been formed would not be this dynamic or would not have these many receptors or everything. It's very understandable, but it's just a very basic version of plasma membrane. Everyone clear till here? Yeah, makes sense. So we know that self-assembly of molecules is possible, and it happened, and somewhere around 2000 million years ago, which is like 2 billion years ago, the first single cells came out, and they must have came out in water environment. They must have been created, they must have been formed in water, aqueous environment only. And this is known as the theory of biogenesis, because biology, the life is now forming by itself. So biogenesis is the first form of life slowly arose through evolutionary forces from non-living molecules. And this is the most accepted view in science, because we have evidences for it, ample evidences, starting with the formation of lipid membrane. And if you remember, when I was teaching you chapter 6, we talked about the RNA world hypothesis. Now you have a membrane. You need inside the membrane something that can catalyze some reactions. The reactions that will not happen outside, but will only happen inside this enclosure, which will give life a meaning, which will start metabolism. And that molecule could be RNA, polysaccharide, nucleotide, because from Miller's experiment, people have also found small nitrogenous bases which are formed. And if you give millions of years, you will also find nucleotides, proper nucleotides forming like RNA, single chain nucleotides. And RNA can act as both a genetic material, and RNA can also act as a enzyme, a catalytic material. Are you able to connect dots, people? Now, as I said that at the end of the class, I will expose something to you. So these kind of cells, primitive cells, or this formed through these conditions are called Quasar weights. Have you heard this word, Quasar weights? Anyone knows what is Quasar weights? So it is write down Quasar weights. You can just write down for yourself. COA. I'll just write it here. COA, Quasar weights. Quasar weights are called protobionts or prebiotic chemical aggregates. So this is basically what we are talking about is Quasar weights. They are prebiotic chemical aggregates that self-assemble. Okay. It contains macromolecules like proteins, hydrophobic proteins, hydrophilic proteins. And nowadays, scientists make in the labs these chemical aggregates themselves, and they study this synthetic evolution right under their microscopes. Okay, so there you can make simple Quasar weights. You can also develop very, very complex Quasar weights, which look something like the first cell that might have arose. Okay, Anyone has any doubts that life did come from non-living substances? Nowadays, it's doable in lab too. So origin of life is clear to everyone. Write down this last line. The first form of life, arose slowly but gradually, from non-living molecules, which was driven through evolutionary forces. Right? Okay, so now I think it won't be very difficult for you to digest and believe that, okay, I think it's possible to make a bacteria, a unicellular organism from non-living organisms all by itself in millions of years if the environment or the conditions drive that reaction to happen. Perfect. So this is clear, but what still you cannot, or you might find difficult to digest is that from here, how can humans evolve? Like from one teeny tiny cell, how can a human come up? Now, again, remember that this is 3.7 billion years we are talking about. So keep time frame in the back of your head every time when we discuss evolution. But still, this doesn't look very, very believable a thing. But in the next class, we will go from here. We'll make a leap and we will talk about the theory of evolution of life forms. So once we know that how life originated, to study that how it evolved to form so many complex structures, because earlier, before this theory got proofs and evidences, people used to believe that everything that we see around ourselves was created as it is, and the animals, plants, insects that we see around it were always like this. So one of the characteristic feature of theory of special creation was that everything is created as it is and is perfect. But we now know that it's not at all perfect. It's very, very flawed, but it's surviving because it is selected by nature. So the kind of pressure that nature provides, these organisms are able to dwell in it, reproduce in it, and form progenies. But in the next class, what we are going to go into the details of is that life was not the same like it is. And here comes the, yes, Kiran.
So the SL theory also accepts that life first evolved in water, right?
Come again. Like I missed the first part of your sentence.
So as I'm saying that the SL Miller theory, this theory we did, this also accepts that life first evolved in water.
Yes, right. You're
But
right.
how is it possible? Because we have high temperatures in water. How is it?
But
how is
Earth
that
cooled down, no? Earth started cooling down. So that's where Urey and Miller used this condenser to mimic that cooling down. Remember? If Earth never would have cooled down, we would not have been on Earth even in 2023, right? So gradually, anything which is hot and is in space, including our sun, it will cool down someday, because everything that is hot radiates heat out. That is the law of physics, law of universe, like law of nature. So Earth was hot, molten. Then it took millions of years to cool down. Then the first surface on the top started to solidify. And when it started to solidify, then because of charge interaction and lightning, energy was passed on to, so if earth will cool down, water vapors will also cool down. So from 800 degree, they will come to 7, 6, 5, 4. And then they will come within a range where they can stay in, the vapors can condense on something cooler, which can be the surface, and then will be formed small puddles with very little amount of water in it. And once water gets in liquid form, you have the stage to do all this biology. You have the stage to do what Urey and Miller did, because Urey and Miller allowed water to allowed this vapor to cool down through this condenser. When it cooled down, it deposited here, and every chemical reaction then can happen because it gets energy from lightning. It has carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and that's how he could find in this place sugar and amino acids. So he said that if I can do it in a small vessel in few months, when Earth was cooling down, there were thousands, lakhs, crores, and millions of these kind of these kind of puddles present everywhere on Earth. Before these big oceans came, this is much before big oceans came. In fact, we don't believe that big oceans, all the water which is present in the ocean is just the condensed form of water which was present in the water vapor form. Lot of this water that we have in the ocean came through meteorites. That is another insane theory for which we have gathered some evidences now. There is much more water out in the solar system as we go far away from the sun. The planets which are closer to the sun cannot have that much of water vapor, but the planets that are farther away from sun, you know that one of the moons of Saturn, no, I think Jupiter, which is called Europa. I'm not sure if Europa is Saturn's sun or Jupiter's. I think it's Jupiter's sun. So it has a huge ocean beneath its crust. Liquid water is there because it's far away from sun. So, and if you provide some heat because of the gravitational pull and push from a big planet like Jupiter, it's possible for water to stay in liquid form. So yes, so this is before that. Do you understand? It's a good question. Does this answer your question?
Yes.
How did life evolve in water? Because that water we are talking about is small puddles that got formed when water vapors condensed and deposited back on Earth because of gravity. They cannot escape in that in the space. Yes, cool. So in the next class, we'll talk about how life form was very different back then and how it evolved to what we see now. So it was never static. It was always changing. And what are the evidences and proofs for it? Okay. So we'll talk about radiation, adaptive radiation. We'll also talk about theory given by Darwin about evolution and its different evidences, not just fossil. Fossil is one, but there are many more evidences apart from fossil that prove evolution. So all that in the next class. Take care. Bye-bye. I think I have taken a little more of time, but yes, see you all in the next class. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.